Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Terra Force, the 1987 arcade follow-up to Terra Cresta. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Nichibutsu, Terra Force released in 1987 for arcades. It did not receive any kind of console port until you fast forward to recently when it received both a PlayStation 4 Arcade Archives release and now a Switch Arcade Archive release, which is the version that I'm playing today. So if you're not familiar, it just basically has the normal trappings of Hamster's Arcade Archive releases. You've got your caravan mode, your high score mode, and more importantly, the main game itself, with all the usual options they have available. Diving into the gameplay itself, we're dropped right off into the first stage, flying our ship here, the Gaios. So we've got the ability to shoot, and we also have a hyper missile that we can fire. The hyper missile just basically acts as a bomb or a missile. It really just depends on where you happen to be at. But one of the really unique features about this game is that it's both a horizontal scroller and a vertical scroller. So you start the game off scrolling vertically, but as we play through the stage, our missile will sometimes have the ability to blast holes in the ground. We'll see shortly after this little ship that we destroy. It is possible to get upgrades. There are 4 different upgrades. The red L will upgrade your laser. The blue B will upgrade your bomb. You can get an S, which is actually the missile. You can get a green S, which will increase your speed. And then we also have a kind of a reddish P, which is a question mark power-up. I haven't actually obtained one of those yet, so these guys will give me a bomb. The power-ups drop from sets of enemies that are the colors of those particular weapon types. Oh, sweet. So as you can see now, our bombs are blowing holes in the ground, so if we go into one of those inns, we're suddenly taken to a horizontal scrolling section. And that's one of the things I think is really neat about Terra Force, that we have these sections above and below ground, although sometimes I really wonder if it's above and below. I'll get to that in just a second. But now instead of a horizontal scroller, we're playing a vertical scroller. And as you can see, there are also these sections where the roof opens up and we can go out back to the top stage that we were in. Eventually the game will force us from one perspective to another if we don't take any of the ends in the bottom or the top, like right here, we're forced back to the top. But we did get some upgrades. In addition to the power-ups that I mentioned, we can also free allies that are trapped by enemy ships, and those basically just act as options, giving you additional firepower, which is really useful as they also give you bombs. So we can dive back underground again. And now we're in a completely different area, a ruined city. So one thing that's like weird about some of the underground areas is sometimes it seems like it's not even the same like planet. There are some where we'll go underground into like a water area, like some where it's like going into an underground area that looks like outer space. So I have a hard time figuring out what it's really supposed to be, but it's still a really neat way to show off transitions between above and below ground. So I did take a hit there, one hit and that's it. The game employs a checkpoint system and you do lose all your power-ups upon dying, so that's certainly frustrating. There will also be boss fights as we progress through the game as well. It seems like some of them can be avoided if you're like know whether to go and be on the top side or the bottom side. But the boss fights themselves, some of them seem to be like really tricky if you don't have the right kind of power-ups. Let's go ahead and get above, so that underground section is kind of kicking my butt. And there we have it. That's Terra Force served up for your enjoyment. So as usual, the trappings of the Arcade Archive release from Hamster are spot on. It really feels good. It's not really possible for this game to have a Tate perspective where you're switching back and forth between horizontal and vertical scrolling. So that way the presentation is just fine. And the game itself looks really good for a 1987 release. But that's one thing I've always noticed about Nichibutsu titles is that they have a really good aesthetic to them, even if I kind of complained about some of the gameplay aspects. So let's talk a little bit about the minus flavors and the plus flavors. As far as the minus flavors are concerned, one of the things that really frustrates me about this game is the fact that it does employ checkpoint systems. The checkpoints are generous; they're scattered throughout the stage, but it's especially difficult when you have a checkpoint right before a boss, no power-ups, and that boss happens to be a really tricky boss. So this is one of those sections that we just got into that I might mention. It doesn't look like we really came from where we were at before. At any rate, other minus flavors are concerned, the power-ups are just too few and far between, and we also have the problem that there is no easy way to see the indication of a boss's health, so it's hard to know if you're really even doing any damage to the boss, which can be frustrating as they are kind of on the difficult side. The game itself is actually quite difficult, but if you're into that classic arcade challenge, then this might not necessarily be a bad thing. As far as plus flavors are concerned, I really like the concept of the in and the out. So where you can go between the vertical scrolling and the horizontal scrolling. I think that's a really fun, unique, and interesting system, and it's the kind of thing that I really enjoy seeing in shoot-'em-ups. A lot of my favorite shoot-'em-ups are ones that do have multiple scrolling styles that switch between horizontal scrollers and vertical scrollers. So I can appreciate this game for that, but for the most part, it's a little harder than I'm really looking to enjoy when I sit down and just spend some time with a shoot-'em-up for a relaxing playthrough. Alright, so that should just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.